Good afternoon. Hello, and welcome to another episode of What Makes America Tick. I'm your host, Congressman Troy Carter, and I proudly represent Louisiana's 2nd Congressional District, Louisiana's finest. We're so proud to be here with you as we engage in what we believe is an engaging conversations with questions and answers and discussions about what makes America tick. We're so happy to be today with our Representative Yvette Clarke, who is the illustrious chairwoman of the Congressional Black Caucus. Congresswoman Clarke has represented New York's 9th Congressional District for over a decade and was elected to serve as CBC chair for the 119th Congress in January. Representative Clarke has spent her career fighting for the interest of New Yorkers and black community as a whole. From introducing legislation that supports women's health initiatives to co-chairing the Multicultural Media Caucus, she works hard to uplift and support every American, be they black, white, or otherwise. Her repertoire of services go a very long way. As the proud daughter of Jamaican immigrants, she understands the importance of backing leaders and policies that promote a brighter future. I'm so lucky to work with her as her vice chair of the Congressional Black Caucus, and I'm grateful to have her here with us today. Representative Clarke, so happy to have you here during this time. Can you update us on the Republicans' disastrous spending plan? Chat about how we're standing up to the Musk-Trump administration and discuss some of the goals that we have for the 119th Congress. You've been busy, ma'am.
Yes, I have. And first of all, let me congratulate you on this wonderful podcast, Representative Carter of Louisiana. It's great to work with you, and it's great to be here on this program to discuss what makes America tick. As you rightly stated, we have been full force engaged in a struggle with the Trump administration as members of the Congressional Black Caucus. Let me just sort of set the table for you here. We entered the 119th Congress with 62 members of the Congressional Black Caucus, 58 of whom were in the House of Representatives, and 4 of whom are senators in the United States Senate, 2 of whom are newly elected women in the United States Senate. This has put us, I think, in a premium position to really have situational awareness for the communities we represent, because we're on every committee of jurisdiction within the House and a good spectrum of committee positions in the Senate. Having that widespread knowledge, information, and engagement as legislators put us in a unique position to, one, advance legislation that will impact our communities, but 2, forestall or avert a number of the very harmful policies that are being put forth by the Republicans in the House of Representatives in the United States Senate.
Congresswoman Clarke, you represent Brooklyn, one of the most vibrant, diverse communities in our country. How does your Caribbean heritage and urban experience shape your leadership in Congress?
Well, New York City as a whole has been historically, for generations now, a portal for immigrants. And I believe that my experience being born and bred in Brooklyn is not that different from many others who were born and bred in Brooklyn and whose parents may have come, or grandparents may have come from another country. I tell my folks all the time, when I was coming up in Brooklyn, I had a lot of dear friends, classmates, whose parents and grandparents came from the Deep South. And when school was out, they would send those kids back down south for the summer. And the only difference for me was that my parents would send me south of the border to Jamaica. And I think that what it does is it builds a certain amount of fortitude. Your Americanness is never in question, because what you give in the building of your community, what you give in the engagement with your neighbors and the fight for justice endears you to as stakeholders in the United States of America, as born and bred individuals who understand the magic, if you will, of the United States of America.
For many who don't know, You have an amazing grasp of obviously the issues, the history, but you also represent a seat that was once held by Shirley Chisholm.
Absolutely.
Tell us about that. That's got to be the history alone of knowing that you have the seat that was once held by our beloved Shirley Chisholm.
It's amazing. So Shirley Chisholm was a contemporary of my parents. My mom knew Shirley Chisholm very well. I was, of course, a child while Shirley Chisholm was representing our community. But to have the first black woman elected to Congress coming from your neighborhood, having similar lived experiences, and just her presence in the community at different events and activities and affairs, you always got this magical sort of experience around her. It sort of lifted you because you knew you were in the presence of someone extremely special, extremely influential, and someone who was making a difference. And she always spoke life into particularly the young people of our community because, you know, she was a preschool advocate and teacher. And so she knew how to bring community together intergenerationally. And I was a beneficiary of that. And so fast forward, after Congressman Major Owens, who was her immediate successor, retired, I was able to succeed my Congressman Major Owens, to become the second woman elected by basically a similar constituency. The lines of the districts have changed over time, and the part of where I represent today is where Shirley Chisholm represented, as well as part is in Leader Jeffrey's district.
And Shirley Chisholm, a heroine, an outstanding rock star, if you will.
Yes.
You're a rock star in your own right. I mean, you've got successes to your credit and a history of accomplishments. And I know the CBC recently worked tirelessly to block efforts to strip funding for HBCUs. Can you talk about how this unfolded and why is this an important win for not just African Americans, for all people? Because education is something we all benefit from.
It's key. Well, you know, like I stated, we have members of the Congressional Black Caucus that serve on every committee of jurisdiction in the House of Representatives, many of whom are in top tier leadership. And these are the folks who know where all the bones are buried and know how to basically get intel and act on it. And we are so fortunate to have an HBCU caucus led by Alma Adams, who is a congresswoman from North Carolina, a member of the Congressional Black Caucus. We know that Congressman Bobby Scott of Virginia is the ranking member on education. And these individuals have followed what this administration has been doing in terms of stripping funding from a number of our institutions. And, you know, they essentially are using AI and putting in keywords, and the next thing you know, boom, those contracts have been negated and funding stripped. We were able to push back. We were able to shame this administration into doing right by these educational institutions, as you've rightly said, that service all Americans in terms of the values of education and the quality of education that their scholars are receiving.
And oftentimes, you hear it, I hear it, we all hear it. What's the Congressional Black Caucus doing? What's the Dem Caucus doing? And oftentimes, there's a lot of work going on beneath the scenes, beneath the water, peddling really hard that the media doesn't always cover. They don't cover the fact that you and I were in a 26, almost 27-hour markup, pushing back with one amendment after another, challenging many of the tales that were told about how these cuts would impact Medicaid, Medicare. And you've been at the forefront leading the Congressional Black Caucus for a little over 100 days now. Some of the most torrentious 100 days after dealing with this president. And you've been vocal. You've been vocal about many issues, but let's talk about sounding the alarm about GOP's attack on voting rights. This is an issue that's all very near and dear to us. Isn't this just another Jim Crow wearing a different suit? What concrete steps are we working on? I know there are issues that we fight on. We know that we've gone to court. We know there are a number of issues, but you've been leading the charge. You've been on multiple TV stations talking about the efforts. And while all of them are not easily seen to the public because there's so much going on, the CBC has been very busy.
Absolutely. I mean, we have no choice. We never do in a society where, racial differences become an excuse for bigotry, discrimination, and hatred. And so when you talk about voting rights, this is, the North Star for the Congressional Black Caucus. So much of our battle has been for the franchise of those communities who've been disenfranchised historically across this nation. And so, as Donald Trump does multiple attempts through executive order to strip members of our communities of their right to vote, sometimes in insidious ways like the voter ID types.
The SAFE Act.
The SAFE Act.
That is on the surface sounds like who would be against something like that, but what it in fact does is it makes it more difficult for people to vote.
Absolutely.
If a woman has been married
difficult.
and she doesn't carry her husband's name and she goes to vote, or vice versa, and she's got to go and get a passport,
Yes.
That's an extra expense, which is yet another inhibiting factor when it comes to people going to vote. And yes, just another version of Jim Crow poll tax.
That's right. That's right. And so we have to be very vocal. We have to be extremely precise in educating communities across this nation about things that sound so benign, but carry
it's named
such
SAFE
damage.
Act, SAFE.
Exactly.
Who's not for that, right?
Absolutely.
Well, it's misleading.
It's very misleading, and we know that it can do severe damage in terms of our ability to pick the leadership in a democracy that reflects on our values and the things that we hold dear.
And the Black Caucus isn't, never will, and we will always fight to make sure that we're protecting the rights of citizens to have unfettered access to the polling places.
That's right.
To keep them educated. We know that voting strength is our voice, it's our strength, it's our way to combat against the atrocities that we're seeing. Unfortunately, far too many times in our community, people take a pass and they don't vote.
You know, in this democracy, it's so amazing to me. I think about some of the other democracies around the world and people's participation in voting. And, you know, people take pride in being able to select their leadership. And they see changes that they'd like to have in their civil society, and they go out and vote in droves. Here in the United States, there's so many ways in which voters are discouraged from voting, where voter suppression can be just a matter of, disinformation, misinformation, discriminatory practices in various jurisdictions across the nation. And now with the saturation of virtual lives and being online all the time and getting on social media platforms, we're even more vulnerable to misinformation, disinformation, and I think that is going to have a meaningful impact if we don't stand up now to counteract it. And I think that I know that is one of the major ways that the CBC is deploying our talent to make sure that folks know that through all means that their vote is required. We're connecting with local civil rights, voting rights organizations on the ground, be they through sororities and fraternities that have get out the vote operations, or other organizations, the League of Conservation Voters. We are partnering with everyone we can because we know that what the SAFE Act would do is really devastating, particularly, as you've stated, to women who may go by their maiden name still, but may be married. And again, the cost that it takes to make those adjustments.
Upwards of $135 for a
Absolutely.
passport. Not to mention the rigors of having to go to the passport office. Your office, undoubtedly like mine, are inundated with people who are having difficulty with getting a passport. We have regular, what we call LAO2 curbside service, where we go to the community and we help people get their passports. It's often a daunting task
And
when
it's
a
only-
person is trying to have a passport to travel. Imagine if you needed it to vote.
Well, and imagine if you needed it under the current conditions where so many of our passport officers have been laid off. And office hours have been diminished. It's becoming increasingly difficult just to process garden variety passports, let alone as we become closer to the various elections, be they municipal, local. This
It's a
setback,
challenge, and we've got to stay on it, and you have done just
Absolutely.
that as our chair. Listen, there's so many issues that you've taken up as a hallmark of your leadership, but I want to zero in on a few. Black maternal health. Given the Medicaid cuts that we're looking at in this big, ugly budget, as they want to call it, a big, pretty bill. There's nothing pretty about this bill because it hurts American people across
That's
our
right.
country. But how serious is this threat to black women and maternal health
It's
that we
huge.
already know was an issue before these proposals?
The disparities in healthcare, particularly for pregnant black women, continue to persist. And it's devastating because it can mean the difference between life and death for both mother and child. We were beginning to gain some ground in, first of all, enlightening the public to the fact that maternal mortality among black women rivals some of our less developed nations around the world, and that we're the only super developed nation in the world where we see this level of mortality among women who are pregnant or delivering or in the wake postpartum, losing their lives. And so the cut to Medicaid would exacerbate that tremendously, because at least women have access to health care through Medicaid. They can do prenatal care. They can have access in the event that things are a bit more difficult with a given pregnancy or the birth of a child. That's the one way that individuals can access the care they need without encumbering huge expenses that come from healthcare, the delivery of healthcare to our folks. And so, what is being proposed right now, these devastating cuts that will impact close to 18 million people in America, it just can't be. We know that many of these individuals are black women and their families.
But the
that will
misnomer
suffer the
there
most.
is that they seem to think somehow that Medicaid is used strictly by minorities, by black folk, by women, by poor people. All of that may be true, but it also reaches into every single segment. In Louisiana, nearly 50% of everyone in the state of Louisiana in some shape, form, or fashion utilize Medicaid. That's for working poor, people who go to work every day but don't earn enough money, so they have to rely on Medicaid. There are people that are living with disabilities, or their children are living with disabilities, and so they are utilizing Medicaid. There are people that are in nursing homes,
Yes.
and so they utilize Medicaid. We have children that would not have health care but for, in Louisiana, it's La Chip. But it's different things in different places, but it's children's health insurance.
That's right.
These are resources that impact people across the board, from Speaker Johnson all the way down. Every one of our Republican colleagues have substantial numbers of people in their districts that are dependent upon Medicaid.
Well, our whole healthcare infrastructure is dependent upon Medicaid, if you really want to put it that way, because you extract trillions of dollars out of Medicaid. That is funding that brings stability to the employer health benefit programs that we all, we all utilize when we're not using Medicaid. And so, the premiums that people pay for health insurance will skyrocket as a result of that. People will be using emergency
And
rooms.
hospitals will close.
Hospitals will close.
Because rural hospitals in Louisiana, for example, when I was a member of the state Senate, one of the first things that was done under the leadership of Governor John Bell Edwards, our last Democratic governor in Louisiana, was to expand Medicaid. immediately we put thousands and thousands of people on the rolls. We were able to open rural hospitals that primarily impacted Republicans. The reverse is also true. When you start ratcheting back, those rural hospitals and access to health care and telehealth and many of the things that came with the expansion will go away.
Absolutely. And you know what adds another sort of poke in the eye with this, and it's even more painful than that, is the fact that our colleagues on the other side of the aisle, Republicans, have decided that there will be a work requirement in order to access Medicaid. Now, I don't have a problem with people working, and most people who do take Medicaid do work. But here's the thing. Not only would you be in a place where if the paperwork wasn't filed on time, you would be dropped from Medicaid, access to Medicaid as a penalty. An additional penalty would be if you were able to gather the funds together, you wouldn't be allowed to enroll in an Affordable Care Act either.
It's a bit of a sucker play because you say we aren't going to cut anybody. Listen, you know, I serve on Energy and Commerce with
That's right.
And it's an honor to do so because we have broad jurisdiction. And we look at the impacts of what these cuts will mean. And we are all, Democrats, the Congressional Black Caucus, the Congressional Democratic Caucus, and all of our caucuses are 100% supportive of rooting out waste, fraud, and abuse.
That's right.
We are supportive of removing people that should not be, who are not eligible to be on our rolls. But that's all talking points and smoke and mirror, isn't it?
It really
because
is.
those are not real numbers.
And
to reach a number of 880 billion or now 715 billion, you are really just playing smoke and mirrors with people's lives because the math doesn't math. And the notion that we're going to have work requirements and twice a year checks, the real method here is to catch people sleeping.
That's right.
If you don't have your check to make sure that you are requalifying, you fall off the rolls. People are busy living, they're working, they're raising their families. And now you say I have to requalify every 6 months. Do you know if people had to requalify for a driver's license every 6 months, half the people on the road wouldn't have one?
That's right. I
It's a
agree.
trick.
Yeah, it is. It's shameful. I mean, we should not be playing these types of games with people's health. And you know, in the wake of a horrendous pandemic, to put people in a position where they're not able to access annual physicals, things of that nature. So many people living with long COVID right now.
Let's dive a little deep into it. And let's talk about, and we'll just kind of move kind of quickly on some of these to make sure that we're able to get them in because I can talk to you all day. And the people would love to listen to us all day.
Yeah.
But we, as I just mentioned, we sat in a 26 and a half, nearly 27 hour around the clock markup while we challenged the Republicans, pushed them into corners and forced them by squeezing their lies to squeeze out the truth.
Yeah.
And it was painful, but it was well worth it. We didn't get any sleep or rest, but we demonstrated that we're fighting 24/7, literally,
Yep.
for the American people as we watch this direct hit on families. And the American people need to know why. These proposed cuts are all to support tax cuts for billionaires, to be able to give Musk and Trump and their billionaire buddies a tax break on the backs of poor people. I often refer to it as reverse Robin Hood, stealing from the poor to give to the rich. In that 26 and a half hour markup, what were some of the most shocking moments? I'll share one that I was very proud of you on. One of the members had the audacity to look at AOC and to suggest she talk directly to them and not to the camera. Well, you don't tell me where to talk. And you were so eloquent in checking him and saying, listen, don't disrespect this system. Tell us about that.
Yeah, you know, I think that this moment has emboldened individuals to step out of line with their colleagues. People are rude. People are degrading. And I'm not going to allow that in the environment in which I'm present. You know, it's toxic. And I think that member needed to know that he had no right to impose whatever he was thinking or whatever he felt on another member. Every member has the right to conduct themselves how and the way they choose to. And so I felt it was important. It just got under my skin to see a grown man like that in a room of equals try to subordinate another member, and particularly a young woman who's doing extraordinary things in our nation. And I think he went for her intentionally.
I don't think he'd do it again, ma'am.
Well, he apologized. He came back and he apologized.
You got his attention, and the rest of America noted that you don't mess around.
I don't mess around.
You stood up when it mattered most, as you always do. So we're talking about these budget cuts. We know what it's doing to our elderly. We know what it's doing to people with disabilities. We know what it's doing to even our veterans and people that are most vulnerable, working poor, who are working every day but are grossly underemployed. We look at some of the gutting of SNAP, food for children, Head Start, housing, giving some $3 trillion tax break to the ultra rich. Why isn't anyone calling this in the mainstream? I know we are. But they're looking at the same numbers. They're looking at the CBO scoring that says that this is not doable, but they're playing along with this charade instead of calling it what it is. It's an attack on America's most vulnerable.
It is, but the attack is even more insidious than that, because at the end of the day, the attack is on the press. The attack is on the courts, judges. The attack is on the American people. When I think about the gutting, you talk about the gutting of these programs, I think about the gutting of the workforce, many of whom were constituted the middle class, federal workers. And now these are individuals who are out there unemployed, having to sell their homes because they can't afford their mortgages, scrambling to make sure that they have next semester's tuition for their children through no fault of their own. These are the individuals who would be signing up for Medicaid as a result of what the Trump administration and DOJ has done to strip them of their ability to provide the services that they have always provided to the American people. And so we have crises within a crisis within a crisis under this administration.
But thank God we're at the table.
Absolutely.
And we aren't going anywhere. We ain't running. We ain't scared. We're going to continue to fight. We're going to be in places the American people can't be, because that's what we do at the Congressional Black Caucus. Let's shift a little bit real quickly and talk about DEI. The Trump-Musk administration has been laser focused on attacking diversity, equity, and inclusion. Three adjectives that should not be offensive to anyone. How can you possibly find something nefarious in equality? How can you find something nefarious in diversity, equity, and inclusion, yet they seem to be laser focused at want to dismantle all of those efforts to bring about fairness and equality so everyone has an equal shot?
Well, when you're a white supremacist, that becomes threatening. And clearly, we all know we live in a multicultural society, a multiracial, multi-religious. That's what makes America so dynamic and so unique among nations. But these individuals have made it very clear that that they espouse white supremacist ideologies, and that's par for the course, unfortunately. And so I think in this moment, what's most important is that people of goodwill stand up.
And a number of those people that may have subscribed to this theory of white supremacy, of nationalism, of being a nationalist and being with Trump until they've become the proverbial dog that's gotten hit by the brick. My grandmother used to say, if you throw a brick in a pack of dogs, the only one that yelps is the one that got hit. So now you've got a whole group of affected Americans who are having voter remorse.
That's right.
Because they voted for Trump, but they didn't realize his practices would impact them. the way they are. So Americans are now waking up realizing that our rule of law, our Constitution, our very way of life are at risk. Our democracy is at risk because of the practices. And ma'am, you have been the chairwoman of the Congressional Black Caucus through some of the most turbulent times. The last 100 days, I think most would agree, is some of the most challenging times for our country.
Absolutely.
And you have led with grace. And I know it's not easy because you're being pulled and tugged in every direction with everyone who has an idea, a thought. But there's nothing like being in the ring. And you're in the ring every day. How do you cope with that, ma'am?
Well, first I start from a place of love. I love Black people. And that love extends to people beyond my lived experiences. And I know what the United States of America symbolizes to me. And that is a land of opportunity, an opportunity to meet a brother from Louisiana, a sister from Brooklyn, to have some crawfish,
little etouffee, little crawfish, a beignet too.
That's what I'm saying.
We got all that.
I mean,
we're the gumbo that brings it all together.
That's it. That's it. And at the end of the day, where do you have an opportunity outside of America to experience this, right? And so I think it's worth fighting for. I believe that at the end of the day, good will always prevail over evil, and the righteous will prevail. And I like fighting. I'm from Brooklyn. What can I tell you?
That's how, and you do it well. Listen, many people know, and many of our listeners know that you're a leader in the CBC. They know that you're a leader in maternity health. They know that you're a leader in so many different ways. But what they may not know is that you're a leader in the area of artificial intelligence as well. Can you talk about some of the opportunities AI can afford us and some of the needs that we have to safeguard, particularly minorities, from biases that may be baked into artificial intelligence?
Well, I come by this, honestly, I'm a sci-fi geek. I've always been fascinated by what the future of technology would mean for us. I was a Trekkie, and prior to that, I was even into the Jetsons. And as we, for those of you who don't know these programs, Google it.
I know the Jetsons. I know all that.
But here we are today.
Who never thought Jetsons looked and talked in television? They had FaceTime before we did.
Absolutely. And look, here we are. The brain has the capacity to create some of the most fascinating things as long as we pursue it with all vigor and vision. The challenge becomes when we know we've got these tools and those tools can be manipulated in order to harm others. And so one of the things that I focused on very early in my tenure here in Congress was the fact that we were transitioning, when I came to Congress, to a digital world. Again, I tell people, and I'll give you this story very quickly, I was the head of the Committee on Fire and Criminal Justice Services for the New York City Council. Why was that important? Well, I was elected in the wake of 9/11. One of the things we found out as a result of that was that many of the firefighters weren't able to pivot because they were on analog radios versus digital. So when the towers went down, so did their ability to communicate. I began to really look at this and what digital technology will mean now and into the future. And here we are today. Everyone has a mobile device. When I first came to the Hill, I was laughing at people with flip phones because I had a Palm Pilot.
Yeah.
Right?
And I've got two bills coming up in the Congress. One is Open RAN.
Exactly.
And the open is Next Gen 911.
Yep.
To speak just to that technology that's moving as fast as it's moving.
Absolutely. And AI is built off of algorithms. And there are a lot of guardrails that need to be erected when it comes to the use of people's personal data, privacy, particularly for young people and our seniors, all of us, everyone in between along the spectrum. We've yet to do any of that heavy lifting in legislative ways. That is the 21st century space that we need to occupy. Right now, our digital world is the wild, wild west. And a lot of folks are capitalizing on that to bake into some of the systems that we use right now ways to harm
with
others.
with biases.
With biases.
When you have AI that has baked in biases, whether it's in commercial lending, in buying or selling a home, or even some of the fundamental things that we find have been discriminatory. If it's discriminatory in normal, I'll say, practices, then naturally those algorithms will pick up those same discriminatory practices within an AI model if we aren't diligent. And I know you have been diligent in that space to make sure that, again, we're at that table. We're so blessed, and I'm so blessed to serve with so many incredibly talented members of the Congressional Black Caucus. We have, as you've indicated, a strong, diverse membership of individuals that have expertise in almost every area that you can imagine within the confines of the Congressional Black Caucus, and we're honored to have those people. And real quickly as we roll out, because our time is going really fast. Juneteenth is coming up.
Yep.
Beyond the celebrations, what do you want our community to reflect on, especially in a year when our rights are being threatened? Juneteenth has its meaning of what would happen then, but now Juneteenth has to move into not only what happened then, but how do we safeguard going forward? So what should we, as African Americans and those of other races who recognize the importance of Black history, should be doing to highlight, remember, and make sure we never repeat?
Well, first of all, I know that every member of the CBC will be within their constituencies, online and everywhere else, singing the praises of all of the contributions of African Americans to the building of this nation. That has to always be front and center, because there are those who want to erase all that we have made possible, notwithstanding being derived from chattel slavery, right? Then we need to make sure that our folks are engaged in understanding that they have the power as citizens of the United States of America to advance all of the areas that need to be strengthened and undergirded, whether it's in housing, whether it's in education, that are currently being confronted and deconstructed by our colleagues on the right, many of whom, again, espouse white supremacist ideologies. We also need to remember that Juneteenth was rooted in liberation and freedom. It was the last group of folk in the United States of America who were not informed of the Emancipation Proclamation. We should never find ourselves in a position where we're the last to know. We have to be united, we have to communicate directly, and we need to use that Juneteenth holiday to reflect on that and to rededicate ourselves to never forgetting, to building more strength amongst each other, and making sure that we keep our eye on freedom.
Ladies and gentlemen, that is the outstanding Congresswoman from New York, the chairman of the Congressional Black Caucus, Yvette Clarke. It has been such an honor to have you with us today. It's been a blast. We got to get you back. We got so much to do, so much to talk about. Thank you all for listening. If you enjoyed this episode and want to hear more, we invite you to share it with others, post it on your social media, or leave a quick rating and review. You can listen to past episodes on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube to catch all the latest of me and our other friends in Congress and around the world, because what makes America tick is not just about what happens in Congress, but what happens in your community, in your backyard, in your neighborhood, because we really are a part of what makes America tick. To catch all the latest from me and many others, visit us on our official platform at Rep. Troy Carter, and subscribe to my newsletter at troycarter.house.gov. Thanks again for being with us. Laissez-les, bon temps roulé. We'll see you next time. God bless.